Alright, so this is going to be part 2 to what if Deku had perfect Cell's powers. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro. Alright, as you could tell, the background and thumbnail is different. A fan on Twitter actually sent me some fan art they did of Cell Deku, and it's amazing, right? A lot of people didn't really like the other image because like I knew it didn't work. Like I just made that like kind of edit for fun, but we're gonna go with this one since the person did take their time, drawing it, and they did give me permission to use it. So we're gonna use this for the background for the rest of the series. So the person who did this, they didn't want to shout out, but I feel like they should get credit for their work. So you could go follow, I guess, The One on Twitter. He says, or at least the description says that he has a YouTube channel, but it wasn't linked there, and he didn't tell me it. So, with that being said, let's get into the actual what if. So, in the last part, we just got done with the entry exams or the recommendation exams, I guess, to get into the UA, right? Oh, also, if you want to send me fan art for any of my series, you could either DM me on Twitter, or you could go to my Discord server, and there's a section where you could post your fan art there, whether it be any of my what if Dekus or Astas, or of my profile picture or anything like that. If you guys want to send me fan art that you guys create, you go send me in those kind of places. All right, so let's get back on topic. So after, I guess we could go to the day of the first day of school. So at this point, Deku is still in his imperfect form, which is his first form. So I guess we could do more to it. Let's say he's not quite to his imperfect form yet, but he's still a little bit less than, I guess. It would be kind of hard to explain, but he's like slightly or a little bit less than what he should be in his imperfect form, since he didn't really train too much, or he didn't get too many Zenkai boosts. So yeah, he is still pretty strong for what he is now. I believe at full power at this time he should be around 30% of One for All. So we're just gonna go with that. So Deku would walk into class, and this Deku would be really tall compared to everyone else. At least, I guess the only person that would really match him in height would be Ida, since they both are very tall. So Deku would walk in. I guess his school uniform would be a little bit different, because I believe that Deku would have wings at this point, similar to, I'm pretty sure his first form Cell. I think they all have wings except for, I'm not sure if Semi-Perfect Cell has wings or not, but yeah. Anyways, he would walk into class, and this is when he would see two people basically arguing with each other, that being Bakugo and Ida. They're arguing over why Bakugo has his feet on the table. Ida says he should respect the equipment that the school gives them, and to respect others who have used them in the past. Well, Bakugo isn't really listening to this. And this is when Bakugo would see Deku and actually go up to him, and basically it's kind of their somewhat of a reunion, since they haven't seen each other in some time because of the kind of training, as well as the kind of week up between the exam and the first day of school. So Bakugo would be pretty excited to meet Deku again, since you haven't seen him in a long time, like I said. And Ida would be kind of he would see this kind of change in Bakugo, since Bakugo wasn't even like looking in his direction, and he looked kind of angry. He would see this as a kind of strange change in personality, or somewhat to that effect. And then he would see, as he would turn around, this kind of humanoid green insect-like person that's around his height. So this is when Bakugo would basically be like, oh hey Izuku, since I don't think he would call him Deku in this one, since they didn't really need to. I'm sorry for the background noise if you guys can hear it. There's like no way I can control that. So he would basically say, "Oh hey Izuku, it's been a long time since we last seen each other." And this is when Deku would be like, "Yeah, I had to spend all that time training for the recommendation." And this is when Bakugo would be like, "Well, it looks like it paid off since you got into class 1A." And this is when Deku would basically say, "Well, right back at you. I'm pretty sure we're gonna be like the top students in UA, or at least for class 1A." And this is when Ida would be like, he would basically introduce himself since it is the first day of school and he is that kind of person to do so. He would basically say his name is Tenya Ida, and basically kind of do that normal introduction that he would normally do with the kind of bow and things like that. So as they're talking, this is when Uraraka would come in and see a group of people kind of talking, and she doesn't really know Deku at this point. So as she sees the two kind of or the three that are there, she would also walk up to them and be like, "Oh hey, are you also in class 1A?" And they would be like, "Oh yeah." And she would be kind of impressed since they're pretty tall for their, well, I guess not Bakugo really, but Bakugo's like I think 5'11" or something like that. So he's almost 6 foot, or I think he's either 5. I think he's like 5'10" or something. Anyways, both Ida and Izuku would be around 6 foot. So she'd be kind of impressed by their kind of height. She would introduce herself saying she's Uraraka Ochako. And this is when the rest of the class, or the Ida and Deku, would introduce themselves, including Bakugo, to Uraraka. And before they could, go further into this kind of conversation, this is when Aizawa actually comes through in that kind of sleeping bag. So he tells the class that he's the homeroom teacher, and that they're going to skip orientation to do a Quirk assessment. And he tells the class, whoever does the worst is actually going to get kicked out. So all the class is kind of freaked out, and they quickly change into their gym uniforms so they could actually do their best. So not Uraraka, Aizawa would tell the class, the difference between using your quirk and not using your quirk, and how the school system has always prioritized you not using your quirk, even though it gives you a big advantage in life. So he tells Bakugo, since Bakugo would have gotten the top score in the normal exam, just how he does in canon, and he would tell him to use or throw the ball both using his quirk and without using his quirk to see the difference. So he does so, and people are shocked at the difference that it makes. So Deku in this one, he would do pretty well in most of the categories. For the grip strength, or the grip strength test, he'd probably get number 1, since it is around 30% of 1 for all. So he'd get number 1 in that spot. For the speed, it is a kind of toss-up of whether or not, I believe he probably could be able to outrun Ida, especially since Ida needs time to kind of accelerate. So I think he'd get number 1 in that test. And for the side-to-sides, he'd be able to get first place in that one as well, since he does have the after image technique, or he could just use instant transmission to basically teleport to each side very rapidly, or use his base speed. So we would get to the ball throw, and this is when Uraraka would still get first, since she would still get infinity, and it'd be up Deku would be next to use his basic, or it'd be next for him to throw. Aizawa would have his eye on Deku, since he has so many different kind of quirks, and he kind of knows a few of them, since because he got recommended, because he has that recommendation, they would have his kind of quirk on file, and he'd be more prominently known compared to the other class, other students, right? So Deku, he sees where he wants to throw it, and what he does is that he basically throws the ball like a pro athlete, and he throws it, and let's say that it doesn't go into space, but let's say it goes across to the other city, to a neighboring city, basically. So I'm not sure how far or how far another city would be, but let's just say it goes that far. So tens of kilometers. So yeah, and I guess the person that Aizawa would decide to kick out would be Mineta, since in a lot of my what ifs lately, I've been getting rid of I think her name is Hina, the invisible girl. So I'm gonna do a little bit different and kick out Mineta. So yeah, Deku wouldn't really protest this, and I don't think any of the other students would either. So Mineta would be kicked out of UA. So this is when I think All Might would be looking and seeing the different Class 1A students, just in case he wants to pick one of them as his successor. I don't know if you guys want him to have one for all, but because that'd be like really, really overpowered and probably too much. So also, I asked you guys last time whether or not his transformation should be permanent, and everyone said, or most people said yes, so that's what we're gonna go with. So after this is done, this is when I guess the last period of the day, and this is when All Might would come through to the door and say, "I am here as your combat instructor." So everyone would be shocked that All Might would actually be teaching at UA, or at least their class, since I think some people would know that he's teaching at UA since it was on the news. So Deku would see All Might again, and this is when what's his name? All Might would also recognize Deku from somewhere, since Deku has such a unique appearance. So he would ask Deku if we ever met before, and this is when Deku would say, "Yeah, I helped you capture that what's it called, that villain." So yeah. Also, I wanted to ask you guys whether or not Cell should be if Cell should be able to do other things, like, you know how like Namekians are able to like stretch their arms. Should Cell be able to do that too, since he is somewhat part Namekian? Should Deku also have that kind of power? You guys can tell me down below whether or not he should have that power. How, like, all the powers of the races that he's made out of. You guys can tell me. So, people would be shocked that Deku actually helped All Might capture the villain, and All Might would basically he would come to that realization. So he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I remember you. You're the person with telekinesis that helped me capture that sludge villain." And people would be like shocked, like, "What? He has telekinesis? Like, what quirks does he have?" Because it doesn't really make sense for him to have telekinesis based solely on his appearance. They thought he had like some sort of just bug related quirk, but it turns out he has like so many different things. So as this is done, this is when Deku would basically ask, or not, never, but this is when All Might would basically tell the students that they got the hero costumes done and to go change into them so that he could do a kind of test, right? So I don't know what we should have for the hero costume for Deku, since he is Cell, or it looks like Cell. So you guys can tell me down below whether or how the kind of suit should look like. So after this is done, everyone will get into their kind of suits, and this is when All Might would choose the different teams, and we could just say that it's the same teams that it was in canon, that being Deku and Uraraka versus Ida and Bakugo. So after this is done, it'd be Uraraka and Deku basically looking out on the plans of the building outside, and this is when they both walk in after they confirm that they're ready to go. So in this one, I don't think Bakugo would be as impulsive as he was in the canon, since he doesn't really have this grudge against Deku. He is rivals with him but it's not really that, mean spirited at all, or that aggressive, I would say. So and this one, I would say that Bakugo actually listens to Ida to kind of stay back. So they would basically wait for them to get to the top floor, so that they could actually fight them there, instead of for them to go chase them. So when they finally get to the top floor, this is when they see Ida and Bakugo basically waiting for them. And what Deku tells Uraraka is that he's going to basically take on both of them while she goes, and basically he's going to act like a distraction as she lifts a bunch of rubble that's going to be created, and use that to basically hit them from behind, or if she can, touch the bomb. So this is when Deku basically goes towards, he runs or dashes towards Bakugo, and Bakugo is ready for this and tries to hit him with an explosion. The first explosion hits, and the follow-up that Bakugo tries to actually hit does not land. So it only did like around, not that much damage, honestly. It only did a little bit. So Deku isn't really too hurt, and he goes for a kind of what Deku does is he tries to go for like a kidney punch and lands it on Bakugo. Bakugo stumbles back a bit, and this is when Ida would try to rush in using some kicks, but at the same time keeping an eye on the bomb so that Uraraka doesn't touch it. So Deku's basically getting attacked by Ida, so that Bakugo's using this time to kind of recover from that hit, and he sees that Uraraka is going for the bomb. He uses the explosions to basically dash towards her to block her from getting the bomb. Deku sees this and decides to use a solar flare on Ida, since he's very close, and no one knew he had this power, since Cell does have this solar flare. Or at least that's what I've seen on the wiki, at least. So he'd be able to use solar flare in this instance. So after he uses it, he rushes towards Bakugo and Uraraka to basically block any attacks that Bakugo would try to hit her with. So Deku basically goes and tries to hit Bakugo, but what Bakugo does instead is that he uses the explosion as kind of a smoke screen to basically block his vision. So after this is done, Bakugo what he does is he jumps back, and he actually plans on pulling his pin. He pulls the pin off of both of his grenade gauntlets and shoots it towards Deku. Meanwhile, All Might is basically saying Bakugo, what are you doing? That's, excessive, right? You shouldn't be using that much force, especially for just a test. And he's like, no, don't worry. He can survive basically anything, and if he's smart, he'll dodge it, right? So what Deku doesn't really want to. What he does is that he throws Uraraka away so that the explosion doesn't hit her, and he takes on the explosion full force. So after a while, the smoke clears, and it shows Deku basically missing an arm and some of his chest, kind of like how Cell was. I think there was a shot of him like that, but I can't remember. So yeah, basically his arm and the entirety of his arm and nearly his entire kind of chest is kind of gone at this point. So after this is done, people are kind of horrified to see this, and this is when Deku basically looks down and regrows his other arm, or his arm and the chest that it was missing. So after this, Deku kind of gets stronger and rushes towards Bakugo. Bakugo didn't really know that Deku would get stronger from this, and Deku kind of knows it. He doesn't know too much, since this wasn't really. He kind of knows he has a thing that lets him grow stronger faster, but he doesn't really know the conditions for it, since this was a kind of a side effect and not really a quirk from itself. So Deku would get stronger, and I think this part would get him fully into his like imperfect form, so he'd get fully into that. So this is when he would rush towards Bakugo and basically punch him through the wall, making him basically land outside. But since Bakugo is very injured and doesn't really want to fall from like 4 stories, he does use the explosions to kind of cushion the fall, but he's still unable to get back into the fight from the injuries. After this, it's just Ida now, who has at this point fully recovered from the solar flare. So at this point, Uraraka would have been able to grab the bomb, since everyone would be kind of distracted on the fight against Bakugo and Deku. So this is when they'd be declared the winners. So I'm gonna end it here, and you guys can tell me who you want one for all for, whether it be a student or one of the big 3. You guys can just tell me down below. So with that being said, this is going to be in the video. So yeah,